Well, now that we have an opening date for Epic Universe, which is May 22nd, 2025, it seems like Universal is back out releasing a lot more information. And Universal's back again with another episode of their Discover Universal podcast. And Universal has some people on to talk about in more detail aspects of the Dark Universe on their shows. So we're going to watch this episode, react to it, and give some thoughts on it. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And just as a precursor, I don't know if it's a warning, but if you've ever seen videos where we react to this podcast, if you've ever seen this podcast or listened to it, it's a little bit cringy at times. It's pretty scripted, but they do have some good information. So just forewarning there. It's not my favorite, I guess you could say, format for a podcast necessarily. But again, it's a pretty, it's a company-based podcast here. So just in case you've actually seen this episode or plan on doing it, I skipped the intro part to save you from a level of cringe that you may not be prepared for. So we're just going to get to the interview part of this.
So friends, we have two of the most creative minds in all of the business. Can you go ahead and tell the listeners about yourself, and most importantly, what is your favorite monster? Francis, would you like to kick us off?
Of course. Hi, I'm Frances Franceschi. I'm a production designer for Universal Creative. My favorite monster, okay, this might be a little one-off, but for where we are right now in our character development, the brides across our land are my favorite. I think they do the most destruction throughout everything. They have the most dimension to them, so I'm really excited for our brides.
You like destruction.
Just wait till you see what they do. Just wait till you see what they do. Oh my God, you'll be impressed.
Yeah, hi, I'm Pete Carcillo. I'm the Senior Creative Director for Dark Universe, and I work for Universal Creative as well. My favorite monster is a tough one because I've been a monster fan my whole life, so I got like a broad array to pick from, but I think if I had to go back in time, I would say the Frankenstein monster, and then in a wrestling match would be King Kong.
Yeah.
Wow, that is creative. I like that.
Yeah.
Is King Kong considered a Universal monster? I mean, I like King Kong. I just never considered him a monster. I mean, in the sense of the Universal monster, I guess.
And I'll just go ahead and say I just made it through all the original monster movies.
Ooh, nice.
Like all the
Yeah.
1930 stuff, and some of those effects that they were able to do in 1930 was
Insane.
amazing.
It's
Like,
true.
yeah, watching like Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the fact that they're filming underwater. I feel like smartphones just got the ability to be waterproof a couple years ago.
I will say, if you've never seen the Universal and horror makeup show that they have at Universal, it's a great show. It's a show. Like, it's a great show, but it's been there since the park opened, but it's still like really entertaining. And they do go through some of the special effects that they used in those old movies and kind of what they've done in like as movies have progressed and gone on. And I will say the stuff that they did back then was very inventive and probably well before its time.
Got my phone. And they're doing
I could take
full
a photo
scenes
here.
like that.
You
in
should
the
have seen the
40s.
behind the scenes part of that because they were like building concrete basins and putting guys looking through windows to film that. It wasn't actually underwater cameras. So it was much tougher than you even think.
See that?
Yeah.
And that's movie making magic. Like
Yeah.
that's what they talk about.
That's it.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful creature. You now that you said that, I may have to give King
No take backs. No.
No take backs? Okay.
No take backs.
Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of monsters, we have like 100 years of just legacy and history to pull from here. But what specifically inspired you guys and the team to create Dark Universe and Darkmoor Village?
Oh, well,
That's a big one.
like I said, it wasn't hard because we've been fans of Universal Monsters forever. And so when someone said, "Would you like to work on it?" It was like not
Immediate
even
yes.
it wasn't even
No hesitation.
a split second because
Yeah.
I had been working on other lands at Epic Universe and said, "Oh, absolutely." In terms of inspiration, those original films that you just watched, you can't beat them. You can't beat them. And I think it's something, if you look all across film history, all of Hollywood history, you won't find characters that resonate 100 years later like these characters do. And it's in part because of the way that they made those movies. These characters really connect with people, and they're not simple monsters. They have richness and they have heart, and so being able to connect to them is kind of the foundation of our whole land. And these monsters are the stars of the movie. If you see a monster in Dark Universe, it's cool. It's not. It's not like I'm going to run away. It's like I'm going to run toward the monster. Because I want to meet that monster. So to me, making a place like a real live in-world place where I can go and meet the monsters in their world, I'm like, I'm there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the really neat thing is that we got to talk to you guys before, and it's like hearing the passion from you and hearing the passion from the team, because it is like Cassie said, like there's a legacy behind this, 100 years of Universal Classic Monsters. And now not only do we get to see them from the silver screens 100 years ago, but today we get to go in person and actually get to meet them in front. And the people behind all of that are people who are passionate like you guys, growing up and seeing them and falling in love with them. And now we as the fans get a chance to actually see that in fruition, like in person. It's a tangible thing now.
Yeah, there's just, to me, it's just, there's nothing more universal than the monsters, right? So to be able to bring that legacy to 2025, right? It's a passion for us, really. But I think for me, honestly, when I was part of the Blue Sky team in development of Epic Universe, so when we were still trying to figure out what did we want these lands to be, the first one was Dark Universe. I mean, nobody batted an eye. It was like, yep, we have to have our monsters.
Smart choice.
Like,
Smart choice.
You know, I will say it's interesting in that when they first announced Epic Universe and they had Dark Universe as part of it, I can't say I thought much about it. I was just like, oh, okay, that seems, those are old things. Like, I can't say I was excited for it, but seeing the things that they're showing the preview videos and things like that, it is a land I'm actually pretty excited about. And I guess on some level, it's a bit of a risk because, again, like Universal Monsters are not something that's insanely relevant today. Like, I know a lot of people that have commented are fans of Universal Monsters and it has its fan base, but I think it would have been really easy for them to just choose a different IP or do something other than Dark Universe in there. So I feel like them doing this is a way. Obviously, it's part of the Universal history, and they've had a really good history with like Halloween and horror, stuff like that. But I do feel like they've definitely had to work a little bit to show people exactly what it's going to be. It's not as much of an easy sell as, like, say, Super Nintendo World and like Harry Potter. Like, those are obviously lands that people are already excited for. So it's seeing how they've gone about it. I do appreciate that it's something that they really wanted to make happen. And it seems like they're being, again, I'm not the biggest monster fan. I can't say that I've seen bits and pieces of the movies, but it seems like the people they have in charge of not only Dark Universe, but all the lands are people that really enjoy these things. So they're able to bring out the aspects of it that will appeal to people like me that don't really know a lot about that. So hearing from them talk about it, and the more that I've seen from the other lands, it's very like refreshing to see the creativity side of it and like almost forcing their way with this in terms of like, no, you're going to like this. We're going to do cool stuff. Even if you weren't asking for it, here's something that is going to be really cool. I think that is, from a company standpoint, along the creative side, I do appreciate that aspect of it.
We get our monsters here, and we've done Creature from the Black Lagoon within our history of Universal Parks, but how we are going to bring these monsters to life in Epic Universe, nobody has ever done before, and how close we're going to bring our guests to the monsters. I mean, it's going to almost feel like they're like breathing on you. That's how close they're going to get to these. So, and it's a lot of hard work that goes on in the background, but when you are working with a legacy IP like this, it's like all the hard days and everything, it doesn't matter. It just feels like an honor to work on it every single day. So it's been good.
Well, and it's something I feel like that fans have just been craving, to be able to experience these all year round, right? Because we have Halloween Horror Nights where we get to experience them a little bit throughout the year, but to actually be able to go year round and experience these stories, see these creatures is going to be so incredibly rewarding, I feel like, for fans and new fans too, right? People who will learn the stories for the first time and just get to kind of immerse themselves into that for the first time.
That's what was so compelling for me when they said, hey, you want to do this? Because I was one of those kids that would paint their face and then get the plastic fangs and run around the neighborhood with the rubber masks on. And to have an opportunity to bring a whole new generation of young fans to these characters and bring new monsters to these stories, bring new characters into this world, it was just too much that you could ever wish for. It was just too great.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and
we kind of have a modern spin on this, right? So we're being introduced to Dr. Victoria Frankenstein. And so it kind of brings new light to these stories as well. So of course we'll get to experience the old versions or kind of be reminded of these old characters that we've known and loved, but Dr. Victoria Frankenstein as well. So how is her story infused throughout this land? Where can we see that kind of come to life?
The Monsters Unchained, Frankenstein experiment, that's where you're going to really get up close and personal with Dr. Victoria and really get a sense of the Frankenstein legacy, the name, everything, and where she is today, you know, how she has evolved the Frankenstein name. So when we say that, like, you're going to see some of the older bits, right? We're inspired, and she's taken over the old Frankenstein manor. So you see a lot of the older stuff from her great-great-grandfather, right, from Henry Frankenstein, and how she has modernized it with her own equipment, right? What has she added on top of that? And what are these new things that she's trying to, like, what new technology she's trying to bring into this, but using some of his old stuff, right? So everything is a little bit of an evolution of where Henry Frankenstein left that. So
That's an interesting take, and that is one thing about Dark Universe. It's a modern version of the monsters, and I think given that it's such an older IP, you kind of have a little bit more freedom to do that versus, you know, Harry Potter. Like, trying to change that, obviously it's more of an active IP. It's the movies are not that old, so it does give them some, I suppose, leeway in that. So I am curious, like, and hear more of them talk about that, but the modern take on it with the grandkids or the, you know, the ancestors of the original characters, and then infusing like the old stuff with the new. But, you know, I am interested, like, that vibe there and kind of how that will go. And really, honestly, how the people that are fans of the original monster stuff, how they accept it. Because that is one thing that I don't know about. So somebody coming into this not being a fan of the original movies, you know, how do they feel about this land and the story behind it on that aspect? So in the comments, let me know what you guys think about that if you're a, you know, fan of the original monsters, because that's an aspect that I'm not going to be aware of. So I am curious about that.
her as a character, like, just having her, I feel like, is already just like a modern spin on all of this.
So cool.
She is so cool. She's such a strong character, and she has so much depth and dimension to her. We talk about these, like, kind of a gray area of her, like, what is she doing? What is she driven by? Why is she trying to capture these monsters? You know, is it to, like, a self-fulfilling prophecy of hers or something like that? Like, she has so much dimension to her. So I think that's really cool. But also, I think how the monsters are also modernized, not just Dr. Victoria, but how the monsters are dressed a little bit. Like, a lot of it got inspired by where we are today, so that we're not always just still in the 1930s, right? We're still in today's time.
So, like, people today can correlate and actually see some representations of themselves within it, and they're like, okay, I can see myself here.
Absolutely.
So there's a good connection between the past to the present and the future.
Yes,
with that.
absolutely.
I think it's really cool how you said it's more of a Frankenstein legacy than it is a character now, which is really interesting to make it almost larger than life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
She is larger than life. Like, her character, she really is. I also say her height, like, she just naturally is big.
Naturally is big.
She's a tall character, you know? It's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, she really is larger than life. So it's cool. Yeah.
For sure. Well, we've talked about, you know, new fans, right? People who don't know about the monster stories entering this land for the first time. What do you feel like that connection piece that fans will have with these characters, with these monsters, just overall? What do we feel when we step in and come face to face with these monsters?
Well, I think the land itself is a monster too, you know, so that everything is kind of decaying and kind of collapsing. If you've never seen a Universal monster movie, this will be like you're walking into the real world where all this happens, and you'll just experience it like you're there. And you should very quickly be able to pick up exactly what the themes are, you know, where the darker parts of town are, you know.
I like the idea that the land itself is a character, and I think that's something that a lot of times can get easily overlooked. And one thing, like, I like about the original Batman movie, with Michael Keaton, is that Gotham feels like its own character and how that is. So I like the idea, like, where they're talking about this, where the land itself is another element or another character that has aspects to it. And I think, given too, like, they're already talking about, you know, they're going way more into the background of this, because again, I think a lot of people are coming from probably my perspective of not having a lot of knowledge or not knowing these movies very well. So it's almost like reselling people on this IP. And I actually somewhat agree. I think there has been some people, I think we did a video on it reacting to another video where Universal might be doing this to relaunch the monsters. Because if you look at the Dark Universe name, they attempted to do these movies a couple of years ago. I don't care how long ago, but Tom Cruise in the Mummy movie, they wanted to relaunch and they called it the Dark Universe. So on some level, I kind of wonder if this is what they're doing. So it's almost like a reverse IP of, this becomes popular potentially in Epic Universe that could launch into like movies or shows or something like that, which that could be an angle that they're taking, but I'm guessing they're probably not going to talk about that. That'd probably be something that if it takes off and is popular, then they would perhaps look at doing.
Where are the parts you may be a little scared to go into? But being a little bit scared is part of this experience, right? We want you to feel a little bit of trepidation, but also rewarded for going in and being brave, going down into the catacombs where the vampires are, going off into the woods where werewolves are running around,
Okay, that's kind of cool. It's kind of what they've done in the Harry Potter, where they've got the dark alleyways that you can go down and have like an extra part of the land. I love that aspect to the Wizarding World stuff. So bringing that in here, I think, is a smart move.
hanging out with really strange monster hunter people in the Windmill. So you want to be able to experience all these things like it's real, and then internalize that, and it just, now it becomes part of you, right? Mm-hmm. Once all of Dark Universe becomes part of your life lived, now we got new fans, right? Yeah. That's what we're really looking for. And then hopefully, because Dark Universe and Darkmoor as a village was designed as basically as a collection spot, right? So all those old movies, if you watched Son of Frankenstein and Frankenstein, they're all different, right? Yeah. The production design, everything's a little different. So we said, okay, let's use Frankenstein as the world, right? That's like the manner and it's like the style of the stones and all that. Let's make it a little more realistic, like we could do it today. And then let's combine all these characters in one place so that we can say all those stories happened here. Now what happens?
Right.
Right. We didn't want to build a museum. It was really important to build something that was alive, right?
Lived in.
But
right?
it's got the history, but it feels new too.
Yeah.
So that's really our hope, was to find the perfect sweet spot so that old fans like myself, don't feel alienated, don't feel left behind. But then new fans can go, man, this is cool. This is for me. So, it brings everybody together around these characters.
Yeah.
I actually feel like that's a pretty solid approach with this, given it's, again, the older aspect of the IP. So I think that's a good creative approach to it. Obviously, I have to wait and see how it's executed. But at least what he's saying there, I do like that.
Yeah. And you talked about, too, how, this is like a family-friendly themed land as well. And I remember, me growing up, I was petrified of anything scary, classic monsters. I was like, I'm good. I don't want to deal with that. I was just too scared. And, over time, I generally got into it. And I'm like, no, it's another level. These are really cool. So it's really neat to see that we have a new generation of kids that are also going to be able to experience this land. And it's like you said, you get this sense of there's a little bit of scariness to it, and you got a little bit of fear, but once you go through it, you kind of feel rewarded for it, and you have this heightened elevation of yourself and confidence, and that's kind of what this land can offer to our younger generations, to be able to kind of step their feet into this world of Darkmoor and Dark Universe itself.
Yeah, we're actively celebrating the 25th anniversary of Islands of Adventure, right? And I immediately started going through my family photos, and I have these pictures from 2002 with my family visiting the parks for the first time, and I can remember being that young and being oh, I want to build up the courage to ride Hulk, right? Or something like that, And the second I got to enough confidence to do it, enough courage to do it, now it's that was my favorite ride, right? After that, that's my favorite. And I feel that's also something that's going to happen with our land. As they're getting older, or as they build up the confidence to be I'm going to go get on Monsters Unchained, right? And then you get that badge of honor. I think it'll probably build that way. But it is still, there are still bits, I would say, going into the Frankenstein Manor, going through that queue, there's a lot of cool things that are not necessarily scary or anything. It's more interesting to see all this lab equipment, her study, her library, all these things. I think a lot of people are going to have a little bit of curiosity as to what's behind the Frankenstein Manor door. Yeah. And I think that's going to push people to go a little bit further. Whether you get on the ride or not, just walking through and doing all that bit, that's a little bit of a badge of honor too, right?
And I think there's one way to take it one step further, right? This is what's so different about Dark Universe, is after I get off either of those attractions, or even if I'm just walking around, I can go over to the Darkmoor monster makeup experience. get made up as a monster, and now I'm a
Now you
universal
become the
monster
monster,
in a universal monster world.
Amazing.
Right? I mean, it's incredible. No one's ever given to us before. When I was a kid, I would have died to have that. Yeah, because
Well, they have had this. Well, I mean, they have had this in the parks, but I mean, I guess in terms of the land itself, so it is not something brand new. But yeah, and also good sales pitch, throwing that in there like that.
You know, it was so cool. And as we talk to all these people, we've worked with so many terrific talents on this project, all Hollywood folks and monster makers. And when we would go through the creative on this and introduce them to the project, they would just like start laughing. They would literally start laughing in the middle of the presentation. I'm like, what would I say? You know, they go, I just never thought that you guys would do this. You know, I never thought that you would take this approach to the Universal Monsters. And honestly, it took a long time to get there, right? We had to kind of create it and get everybody behind us. And now it's like a no-brainer. Everybody's like, yeah, that's the right thing.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
And if someone's afraid of monsters, how does the family experience all these other elements that come with the world? I know you said the makeup experience is going to be really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to some of those other ways.
That's part of it. That's an empowering thing.
Yeah.
I think that it is a little bit about challenging yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Epic Universe on the whole, if we just look across the entire park, is an incredible collection of family experiences. And so what we empowering.
I'm just curious all these other elements that come with the world. I know you said the makeup experience is going to be really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to
So I've been curious about this in the past. In the background, it looks like to me that they're recording these episodes in this studio is next to the Brown Derby hat shop, which is like the I can't remember, something drugs store there, like right next to the pharmacy. I think that's where they're recording this because you can see the Beverly Hills sign over there. I'm pretty sure that's correct. So, sorry, I don't know if anybody cares, but I've been watching this, seen these before, and I've always been trying to figure out where they're recording it from. But I believe that is where they're recording these from.
Yeah,
some of those other ways.
That's part of it. That's an empowering thing.
Yeah.
I think that it is a little bit about challenging yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Epic Universe on the whole, if we just look across the entire park, is an incredible collection of family experiences. And so what we've tried to do is find the balance to where we can say that this is a little bit edgy, it's a little bit transitional.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, the kid may be a little scared, but these are really brief moments of fright mixed in with a lot of thrill and a lot of fun and a lot of shareable experiences, right? Because the more we can share in it together, the more we like, even a scary moment, the more it bonds us together, right?
Yeah.
And that's, so I think there's even if it might seem a little scary, that it's actually very rewarding for
and
a family
you can relate
to
to
do
some
it.
of these monsters like you were saying earlier.
Well, and we do
I'm curious. I've heard him say before that the land is like PG-13-ish. I am curious how the balance will be because I think Universal can get away with a little bit more of being scarier, just given the nature that, you know, what Universal is. It's not necessarily has the, I guess you could say, limitations like say Disney does, like, and they're going to do the Villains Land over there, and I think they have a much harder time in trying to, like, you know, thread that needle between something being kind of scary but still being kid friendly, as you know, a lot of the things for the Disney parks are designed for little kids in mind. So I think they have more of a challenge than say Universal does in this, because I think Universal, it'll be more accepted if it's a little scarier. So, you know, given our kids are younger, you know, I am curious as to like how scary aspects of it will be. And like, I feel like some of it could be a little playful, but some parts could be scarier. It just kind of depends on where you go situation. But I am curious about that.
Telegraph everything. So, you know, you'll know from the time you walk in to Darkmoor that there are monsters around.
Yeah.
You know, just at the outskirts of the village, there's a caged, like a cage of where they trapped a monster, and it's all decayed and it's gone. And it's one of the mole people. If you ever saw our old Universal movie, The Mole People. So right away for
That's what I have to
So we have mole people in Darkmoor, and so right away you know that this is a Universal monster experience, but you also know it's a little bit scary, right? So honestly, it's all family friendly. It's accessible, but you have to look at it as a little bit scarier than your average. It's not Halloween Horror Nights. It's not jump scares, but it is true to our legacy, right? And if you look at these movies, these old.
That's interesting. So no jump scares in the land. I do believe that they did say there's going to be jump scares it might have been Curse of the Werewolf. I can't remember if it's Curse of the Werewolf or if it was Monsters Unchained. So I think some aspects in the ride queues will have some jump scares. But, okay, in the land itself, it doesn't seem like you're going to have jump scares and things like that. But yeah, I think it's a good point, because I think a lot of people look at, is this going to be Halloween Horror Nights, which is one thing, like, I'm not a big fan of the horror genre myself. Like, I enjoy Halloween Horror Nights, but I can't say the genre of a lot of those houses is, like, really something I enjoy. But I do like the idea of Universal Monsters being much more psychological and not as much, gore, I suppose is the best way to put it, and things like that. So,
Old movies, they weren't about being scary, these monsters. I mean, Phantom of the Opera is terrifying, right?
Yes.
But it's like an obsessive love story at its foundation, right?
Yes.
Hunchback, same thing. Frankenstein, just out there looking to be accepted by people. He's
all about love.
He's scary. He's scary, but he's not like violent, right? The sweetest scenes in Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein are all about him being rejected, So there's a way that you can connect to this and make it feel real to you without it being too scary.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned entering for the first time. I have to go back and ask about the portal because it looks absolutely incredible. So tell us about the portal. What do we experience when we first step into this world? What is that like? Just being opened to Dark Universe for the first time.
So one thing about, we were joking earlier about like all the different universes, right?
Yeah.
So we are Dark Universe, but there was a general creative intent that was when you go through these portals, you really are transported to a different universe, right? So you will have this type of transportation sequence via LED, media, sound effects, visual effects. Like a lot is going to be happening to transport you to this different universe. And the way that our
I actually like that with the portal idea. So, I think it's the same idea of, like, say, Magic Kingdom, and Walt had, wanted it to be a transition from the real world to this, fantasy land, this fantasy world that you're walking into, to where, like, it transports you where, you have, I have my beefs about how difficult it can be to get into Magic Kingdom, and a lot of people have talked about that. But I like the idea here of this is a transition area into each of these lands to really immerse you. So I do like that aspect to this, because I think every one of the lands is going to have this aspect to it. So I think that's something that's unique and something Universal hasn't done before. Actually, really no theme parks have really done this in terms of having these portals to go in to where it just fully immerses you to whatever world or portal you're walking into. So I like the idea of that for sure.
portals are designed, you might get a bit of our manor facade from different areas of the land. But honestly, when you're standing in front of our portals and you're looking in, you're not seeing much behind it, right? So that it gives you that time to really transition you into the land and then be completely exposed to what's in front of you, right?
I think that's a cool aspect. Like, it's presenting you like a show. I think that's pretty cool.
So there was a lot of like detailed design work done to make sure that those bits can be covered when you're standing in front of the portal, right?
Yeah.
To really allow you to have that like entry sequence walk through.
That immersive nature.
Yes,
Gotcha.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that level of detail with that. Like, the sight lines, which is something that I had talked about with Epic Universe are able to do that they can't really do in Studios or Islands of Adventure, given they're just limited on the space and the way the parks are set up. But here, they're going to be able to really control all those sight lines to really immerse you into each land. So I like hearing that there, that much detail has been put into that.
See some of the electricity kind of flowing through, and we see the electric pieces kind of throughout the land as well.
Yeah,
And
well, but if you want to think about the apparatus, right, the electric thing, to me, the portal represents the struggle that you see in Frankenstein, right? Because Frankenstein's kind of the foundation of this version of Dark Universe. So it's the apparatus versus death, right? It's like the life and death, the nature of all that. And so that's what this whole portal is trying to play out, and it's giving you like a teaser for what the major themes are once you go inside.
But there's something really unique to, I think, us as Universal. We can kind of toy with that edge, right? Of like, what is too dark? What is, like, I think that it's something very uniquely Universal, that we could go to almost this like a little bit of PG-13 area with this land and these.
I completely agree, and like kind of what I just said. I think they do have the advantage of being able to do that.
Attractions and not get away with it, but it's almost like
it's fitting.
It is fitting for us. And I really do think that this is our first time truly stepping into it as a full day experience, not just from HHN, which is a nighttime experience, allowing our guests to really experience this like edge and darkness a little bit throughout the entirety of a day, right? So I think it's very unique to what we can do as Universal.
Now, like speaking about theming, I know we talked about the portal, which I'm not trying to be biased. It's my favorite one so far. It's really neat what you guys did there. But going into something I love talking about, food. And we have some really cool, unique theming experiences as far as food and beverage goes for this land.
This is the first time I've heard them go into depth about the food. And I will say, I've said in other ones, I think the food, like obviously I'm looking forward to Epic Universe, as a lot of people are, but I think the food can be something that could take Epic Universe, into another level in terms of if the food is good. Because Universal, I'll give them credit, the newer food options that they've done have been better historically, and they're still getting better. Like you talk about Mardi Gras and some of the food stuff they've done. It is getting better, and like Minions Cafe and a lot of the Wizarding World stuff, I think has been really good. But if the food is really good in Epic Universe, I think that is going to be something that will, elevate it even further because, people love to eat at theme parks. So I think the food itself can end up being an attraction. Disney has had that for a long time with nostalgia with certain food items. So we'll see if Universal's able to do that with some food items that they've got in Epic Universe.
I would love to talk about Das Steakhouse.
Oh, Das Steakhouse.
That sounds really good.
The thing you have to get is it's S-T-A-K-E, right? Steak.
Right.
So one thing I didn't know before I started studying the vampire world is it's a very political world where stakings happen all the time, right? Vampires stake each other, which I didn't know, right? We made it up. But we had to create a fiction around this. And so underneath Darkmoor, this steakhouse exists at the outlet of the catacombs that Victoria's doing experiments in. The vampires also have a huge vampire colony underneath Darkmoor, right? There's even a well so that they can feed blood down to the colony from the village above. It's creepy as can be.
I mean, that's pretty cool. And a little creepy, but I like that. That's cool.
Right? Okay. And so these vampires, if somebody gets out of line, right, as vampires do, they all pull out stakes and and stake them. Now they don't explode into dust or anything. Okay. They actually freeze. And this comes from our film House of Frankenstein. And then so the familiars, the people that are serving you in the steakhouse, they're keeping an eye out in case vampires get hungry. And so you never know if you're going to come out a vampire or we like to think you come out with little bite marks on your neck. That'd be kind of a good thing. But it's really, really cool, and it looks amazing inside. And it really is we really hope to be the greatest theme dining experience in all of theme parks. Yeah. What did you?
It's a pretty lofty goal there. I like the idea of Das Steakhouse. First off, I love steak, but the idea of vampires serving you steak is in kind of an ominous atmosphere. So hopefully the steaks are, just as good and cool as the ambiance hopefully is.
Did you get the other one though? The Burning Blade.
See, I was I want to say that for last because we could talk about it now because every time I've heard about this, so the windmill's gonna be on fire. The windmill's gonna be on fire. I'm like, is it gonna be on fire?
Yes.
Hey, he said it.
It's confirmed. That is just
it explodes.
That's pushing the boundaries of I've never have seen that.
See, this is the thing about this podcast that does they obviously know this is the case. It's all very much scripted, which whatever, they're selling it, but it's just one of those things where I'm you work for Universal, they've released concept art, they've talked about this stuff, but that's just me being nitpicky.
Anywhere is the fact that you guys are going to have this experience, the Burning Blade Tavern, where you got unique characters like the Hounds and stuff. That's going to be a part of it. They have their own story within that. Kind of walk us through seeing the facade and getting into the Burning Blade and what the whole vibe is being inside there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
So imagine you're in the village and the bell starts ringing in the bell tower. Mm-hmm. That's the sign that there's monsters been sighted. And so everyone makes their way to the Windmill. And you can hear the crowd building. We have this about a 1.5 minute show that goes on with the building up to the explosion. And
I've never heard them talk about this before. That's cool. I mean, we do know they're going to do this in the Celestial Park. There's going to be a ceremony when the sun sets, in the whole park, and I'm sure it's going to have lighting elements. So I like this aspect. Now, this is probably pretty similar Diagon Alley whenever the dragon shoots flames, but it sounds like there's going to be more of a show leading up to, the blade catching on fire, though. That sounds pretty neat to me.
And honestly, when we first did it, it didn't work. This is the way things are in theme parks, right? Yeah. It doesn't always work the first time you do it. And so we spent a year and a half working on it. And we tried some things that we used some aerospace technology, and we tried some things that have never, ever been done before. Our parks are full of innovation. In case you don't know, our walls in our offices are lined with patents. And it's because we really do push the envelope. That's what's so unique about what we do. And
I mean, I love hearing that, especially given the creativity and like everything like that, like going to that length just to do fire on a windmill. I mean, I like the details that have been put into everything I'm hearing about Epic Universe. And I feel like it's something that, you know, again, this is not about Disney, but I feel like it's something Disney probably set the standard on and would have done years ago. What kind of made Disney World was these little details like this. And I feel like Universal is definitely implementing that into what they're doing and just kind of doing like old school Disney Imagineering type of things of, you know, going into like aerospace technology to do a windmill, like a burning windmill thing in a theme park, which sounds crazy, but it's like those small details to me that do end up making a pretty big difference in the guest experience and like the overall satisfaction of a ride, a land, a park, whatever it is.
And so to create something that actually looked like burnt wood and burn for a minute is
Wow.
really incredible.
Moving. Like,
And moving, and it's not going to be a one-night experience. Like this is every single night.
It's every day.
It's throughout the day.
And the day.
It's like,
Really, we're doing things that nobody's ever tried, right? And so you sit there with these massive illusions going, is this going to work? And when it finally does, with a tremendous team, and you go, oh, I can't believe it, you know? And then you start showing it to other people, and they go, wow, that's not CGI. I go, no, none of this is CG. This is real.
Wow.
And so
I don't know if there's footage of this because to my knowledge, I don't know if they've tested this in the theme park yet, like looking at the construction photos. So I mean, obviously they've tested it somewhere, but I am curious to see this when they start testing it because surely, you know, people are going to get footage of it, but seeing it would be pretty kind of cool because apparently what I've heard, I don't know if they'll talk about it, is that they use a certain type of fuel mixture to where you're going to be able to see this at night. It's going to be visible and at nighttime. So I think a lot of aspects of this land are going to have a different feel during the day and then during the night. So, you know, obviously the flickering lights and things like that are going to be much more vivid at night. So I feel like this would be a really cool thing to see at night, go into there and have a drink or whatever it is.
So I can't wait to share it with you. I think it's going to be great.
and not to like toot Pete's horn or anything like this, but I will say that it being on fire and spinning alone is already amazing, right? And then Pete took it another level with the detail that's actually in this faux wood of the wings themselves of the burning blade. I mean, there's so much detail in that. And you could have just left it straight at, it's on fire. Like, that's cool enough. But you were like, no, we have to dive into the detail on how this wood, this burning blade actually looks. And there's just so much behind that. And I think, again, it's to the original point about just being passionate about what we're doing and making sure that we live up to this legacy and do it justice. And, like, details like that. I mean, you could have just accepted it at burning and you were like, well, but that's...
I love hearing this stuff. Like we talked about the Comic-Con panel that they did where Steve Tatham was there, who's the creative head director of Epic Universe. Like hearing him, how passionate he is and the entire team that's behind this park, like how much they care. Like he got emotional talking about going to a theme park when he's a kid. Like these are things that, again, I think Disney used to do really, really well. I think over the years, they've kind of lost their way on some of this stuff due to, you know, corporate nature of things or whatever you want to say about it. So I think in terms of theme parks, like Disney set a standard for theme parks that, in my opinion, they haven't lived up to the last, you know, little bit. Whereas Universal has obviously taken that into account and like they're doing the things that I think Disney used to do really well. And again, I'm the type of person when people start going and digging into the details, and when she says, you know, they could have left it there, but they go a little bit further, I very much appreciate that. And these are things that probably everyday guests are not going to necessarily notice. They're not going to point it out, but I think it lends into the experience and just how much you take away and how much of a immersiveness a land or a ride or whatever the case may be will be for a guest. But I think these details do end up being very big things. And I think when you start overlooking details is when things don't hit like they're supposed to. And when you have a team that digs into the details in anything, there's a theme park, life, business, whatever it is, these are the things that end up making a massive difference. So I love hearing that.
That's what makes our job so rewarding, because we're sitting there, and a lot of times it doesn't work right off the bat, right? And you're sitting there and you're just like staring at this going, how am I going to take this to the next level? And then how am I going to take it 2 more levels up, right? Because we're Universal. We can't be satisfied with just okay.
Yeah.
It's got to be epic. I mean, literally, we put the name on the shirt. You got to live up to it. And so that's what all of Epic Universe is about going above and beyond what's ever been done before. And I think and I say this having seen the other lands too, I really believe it's true. This is going to be such an incredible experience when people come to see Epic Universe.
And
Well, and there's something to be said too about obviously Universal's owned by Comcast, but having the whatever you want to say, the corporate structure or the management that allows this type of creativity and to go into the details, because obviously this is going to cost more money. So I like the fact that it seems like Universal is really unleashing creativity and just really letting them loose in doing this. From everything we've heard about Celestial Park to Dark Universe, like everything else, it just seems like they were really allowed to do much more creative things and really have the budget and the leash to like try these things. Again, I love hearing that.
it's kind of a 2-part reveal, I would say, how the land is designed, you know, going through the portal, being in the cemetery, actually 3-part. You go through the portal, seeing the cemetery, and then you get to the village walls, right? And the way that Pete has designed the setup to where you see the village, but it frames the manor, the Frankenstein manor.
Cool.
Beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. So that's like the second step of the reveal in the land. And as you continue further, then you see the windmill. So that's like the third part. It's like the icing on top.
Okay.
And in that shot, you're going to see a little bit of the village. You see the coaster, the windmill, and the manor facade. It's just, it's all set up so beautifully as you're walking through, and it's a great reveal.
Again, that's another detail aspect. We've done Keys to the Kingdom tour over at Disney World, and you get a lot of the historical aspect of like what they did in terms of setting up the reveals, and like when you're walking through areas, like these are things that, again, used to be taken into great detail. And not saying that they don't do it anymore in a lot of places, but I do like hearing about them thinking about these reveals and the details and how it's framed and how you see it, because I think that just adds even more of a cool and immersive element to something like this.
The beauty of 3D modeling, honestly, because we model everything, we design everything in 3D. And so when you come through the portal, there was like, well, we don't want to see the manor right away. So we literally built a cube and said, how big does this need to be to block the manor, and then design from there, like keep evolving the story. So the story development process for everything is kind of working back and forth between what's practical and what's needed, what's fun, and then how can we tell a story that can pull people into this, you know?
Now, I knew you might be a fan of thrilling rides. Potentially.
Maybe a little bit. maybe a little bit.
There are two very unique, incredible experiences that we're having attraction-wise and ride-wise at Darkmoor and stuff. Curse of the Werewolf.
Yeah.
I want to know a little more about it, because I think this is the ride that's kind of more like really like family driven, like, you know, anybody of all ages, as long as you're 40 inches or taller, they can, you know, ride. But it's not just a family coaster. There's a unique thrill that's added to this, and you guys talked about that earlier. Can you kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously we want to reach as many people as we can and make sure we have great experiences for everybody. The Curse of the Werewolf started out as a way to bring the werewolf story into Dark Universe, because it's such a huge part of our legacy. And since we have, I don't think it's a surprise, we're not giving away the Wolfman in Monsters Unchained, we said, all right, well, in our legacy, we have all different types of werewolves, right? So could we bring the longer snout type of werewolf and give that character a ride as well? And we went back to the original film, The Wolfman, and we said, the story beats are basically, you know, he goes out on a date with a new friend. They go out into the woods. They meet this mystic woman named Mileva. She says, bad news, you're going to be attacked by a werewolf. And then that's how it happens. So we said, okay, it's a fairly simple story. Could we actually have that same thing happen to you? Right? Could you go out into the woods, meet this mystic woman named Mileva? She says, bad news, puts you on a wagon, puts you in the wagon, sends you out into the woods. You're immediately attacked by werewolves. And then can you feel like you're transformed and running through the woods, and then come back to the camp? And she says, forever now, you must beware the moon, right? Beware of the moon. So it's very simple, and it's straight out of our history. We kind of have a huge backstory on Mileva now. She's our first Asian character apart from the bride in Dark Universe. And And she's really amazing. I mean, it's a terrific looking character. But basically, the story is come out, get attacked by werewolves, transform, and then come back and now you're a universal monster. Right. So every minute we're making 20 fresh werewolves. Come off the ride.
Can you explain how you got it to feel like you're a wolf running, or you're a werewolf running through the forest?
Yeah,
How did you create that
believe
effect?
it or not, it starts with the track design. Our track design, I looked at it and I said, okay, so I see what you're doing. And Eric Parr, too, is amazing. Came up with this whole shuttle launch idea where you actually experience the werewolves 3 times on the ride. And then you get shot out at the end to the howl of the werewolves. You go over the high hill, come down, and then you're like right at grade, right at the ground. And you hear the werewolves, like you're all running through the underbrush, and you hit this tight turn.
Yeah.
And then it shakes you all up and kind of sends you back to the camp. But it is a fantastic minute, and it's so shareable, right? Because the whole time you're looking at all your friends riding with you, and it's just a blast. It's so fun.
I think
So it's a pretty short ride if he says it's a minute. So not a long ride, which if you look at that coaster, the track is not very long. So it seems like one potentially could move a lot of people through depending on how many cars and things they have running.
free spin or the free yaw motion from the launching, and it kind of adds that next layer of thrill. So rather than just sitting there and launching forward, you're slowly spinning.
Wait,
too.
question here from Dylan Charles.
Yeah.
You said it spins.
It has a free motion, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
like
it's a powered spin at first, so it does rotate at first. But we were focused on the notion of transformation, right? Like turning from one beast to another beast.
Well, that was an extreme detail. You guys are going to leave that out for a second?
That's why I was like, when is he going to start talking about spin?
Here's the thing, and I've written it many times now.
Jealous.
Because every time you get into the attraction, the loading of the vehicle is different, right? Like if Francis and I are on one side, you two on the other side, our body weights actually are going to drive the vehicle differently. Right. And so you can't actually tell exactly what ride you're going to get.
So it's never going to be the same.
I
like that idea where each ride's a little bit different. And I had questions about this, which, hear him say. So at first it is going to be a powered spin, very much like Guardians of the Galaxy. Like that's not a free spinning coaster. It is controlled. So it seems at first it's going to be controlled. And then as the ride at some point goes on, it's just your body weight that's how it controls the spinning. So each ride could be a little bit different. It's a pretty cool element.
I've never been on where it's the same twice.
Oh, wow.
And
Amazing.
Well,
That's amazing.
Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein experiment. We were so honored to see some footage yesterday from Greg Hall, which I don't think I slept last night. Did you guys sleep?
No, I didn't sleep.
I'm like
This video
thinking
was
like, how
crazy.
does this work? How are we going to experience this? Tell us about that attraction as well, because oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we feel the weight of that legacy all the time about the Frankenstein name. It's like when we want to do, if we have to make any like creative compromises or something, we always just think back to like, no, we need to go forward with this detail because we need to give our guests that detail. They haven't experienced this. We have to do it. So we're constantly feeling that, but it's everything about this is just larger than life on the Monsters Unchained. It really is. We have, I think it's 14 animated figures, so 14 monsters,
That's a
right?
lot.
14 animatronics. I mean, this is one of those things where a lot of people will criticize Universal for using a lot of screen-based attractions, which they have historically, but I do now. I'm sure maybe they'll talk about it. There'll be more screens, some screens using this, but 14 animatronics, that's a lot. And from everything we've seen, and we're probably going to see some clips here, they look fantastic.
Yeah, we have 14 of them, and that's just the characters, right? That's not including like any animated props or any SAE equipment or anything like that. That's just characters. Like this thing really is, we have packed so much into this, but really it does focus around Dr. Victoria, right, and her experiments. So I think that's something that's really unique that we created this Dr. Victoria character and that it's driven and it's around her. The storyline is around her and what she's doing with these experiments. You start to question, you're like, okay, why is she so fixated on these monsters, right? Why does she want to capture them? What is she trying to prove?
Oh, she's capturing them.
So you're going to I will say, I'm hoping I'm not giving away too much, but as you go into the manor, right, the Frankenstein manor, you're going to start going deeper into the catacombs. And that's where, when she captures them, she really is trying to learn more about them in hopes that she can change them to be part of our world, right?
Okay.
We'll be able to be
That's
amongst
nice,
us,
yeah.
right? That's what
Yeah.
she wants to prove, that these monsters can still be one with us. So as you go through the ride, you'll start to see that there's some that she has under her, is it control, or are they really okay? But you start to see that. And then her big experiment is Dracula, right? So that's the one that she's like, I can prove that I can control Dracula. No, you can't. Right? No, you can't.
That's what's so great is, Henry's experiment was all about ego. Victoria's experiment's all about ego,
Yeah.
right? She just wants to prove that she's a genius, and she got a little bit of success under her belt, and
Just a
then
little
just
bit.
jumped right to the biggest challenge of all.
Yeah.
And then because she knows, like all of us, nothing counts unless people share it, right? Yeah. So
She wants to go viral.
so she's got to train. It's legit. But she puts us right, like, face to face with the most dangerous character at the worst possible moment, right? And then all things go crazy. So, it's really it's not a new story, but it's a really well told story, and I think it's going to be brilliant. I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant. It's an incredible attraction.
I mean, if this is a scene from the ride, you would potentially have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 animatronics, 6 in one scene. So I imagine various scenes. So again, if you're not familiar, this ride is a Kuka arm-based ride. So if you've ever ridden Forbidden Journey, that's what that is, where it's got a big arm and it's on a thing and it moves around from scene to scene. So I'm assuming if it's, given that it's Kuka arm, that it's going to do a very similar thing here, but instead of like on Forbidden Journey where it drops you into a scene. I mean, there are some set pieces in Forbidden Journey, but instead of dropping you into a scene where you're like you're kind of a 3D immersion or makes you feel like you're there with it, it's going to bring you up into a scene that's got these animatronics that come to life. So I imagine a little bit what it could be is like a souped up version of Forbidden Journey.
Looks brilliant.
And it sounds too like this whole world of Dark Universe and being in Darkmoor. It's like, who is the monster kind of thing. There is no good, there is no bad. It's just you as the guest getting to go through this can kind of pick which storyline you want to take from it. What did you get walking through it? And then that's what's really cool about Dr. Victoria Frankenstein. It's just like, she wants the monsters to be accepted into this world because maybe are they trapped within themselves? And however, she's capturing them herself for her own experiments as well. So it's kind of like you get this two sides of the story and you can pick what side you kind of relate to in a way with this land, which is really neat.
Yeah, that's where monster fans, that's why our characters still work, right? 100 years later is because they have that gray area. They have that richness that all of us can relate to, right? I mean, inside all of us is someone longing to be accepted, someone wanting affection, right? I mean, these are really basic things, and that's why our characters work, and that's what we hope to convey through Dark Universe.
Yeah. And I think the buildup of walking through the manor gates, going through the queue, and going through the ride, the ride is really going to drive that thrill and seeing all these monsters, but you're also going to get to experience them in the queue as well. And I think how we build the Victoria character and her background and Henry's background in the queue is really interesting. And there's a lot of things that you can gather from, like, what is she learning? Like, what is she interested in right now? Why was she studying creature this way? Or why was she studying mummy? Like, you're going to see a lot of that in the queue. And I think that's really unique and cool on how we built her background is throughout this queue.
Well,
I mean, that's not anything really brand new in terms of, like, it's become kind of a common thing with rides as the queue is part of the attraction and telling a story. But that's something that in modern theme parks I like a lot, which is instead of just waiting in a line and just being bored, you can extend the story into the queue and kind of give more backstory. So if you are paying attention in line, you could get more out of the ride. And then I'm curious how she said that. Are there going to be animatronics in the queue? Because it sounds like there might be, unless they're just going to show videos. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but potentially you would have animatronics in the queue. But I believe on Monsters Unchained, they had said that there are going to be jump scares in this line. So he said there's not going to be jump scares in the land, but I do think in the queue there is supposed to be, if I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but I think that's something that I did hear.
I think we should book in another 6-hour-long interview with them because
I could go
we
forever
have
with this. This is
like
so
a
awesome.
million other questions, but This was wonderful. This was a good tease, a kind of step into this world. We're so excited, and you guys have just worked so hard, and we cannot wait to see your hard work come to fruition. So thank you for sharing all this with us, guys. This was
thank you
absolutely
so much, guys.
fantastic.
And congratulations again for the land. It looks remarkable now. I can't wait for people to actually experience it in person.
I know it's Pete and I here, but this is a massive team. Like, we really are. I say massive team, and I think it's more like we actually are a relatively smaller team, right? But for what we're producing, but the way that we're all working together, there's
It's kind of weird. It's a massive team. Well, actually, it's kind of a smaller team. Okay.
so many people behind this, and everybody is just as passionate about bringing this to life and making sure that we do justice to this land. So there's a lot of hard work going on, and our team is the best on it. So
Well, yeah, I feel so privileged to be here to represent their work and to be a part of this project. We're so grateful.
we're two people on a team of many, and it takes a lot of long hours and a lot of just drive to get this thing done, and we're all doing it, and I'm really proud of just our team. Our team is great. So
Well, we're excited. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Well, again, some of the format of this podcast is a little cringy at times, but I thought that was some really good information and something like, again, from my perspective with Dark Universe, I'm not coming from it. Like, I don't really know the original movies that well. So I did like hearing them talk about, well, first off, I liked hearing that they were, basically nerds about Universal Monster stuff. And this is something that I've talked about at length when it comes to like comic book movies or any properties that already have a following that get made into like a movie, a game, or whatever it is. I feel like if you get people that make it, that are fans of that property, that are nerds on it, that understand the detail, and you let them really take over and just do the things they want to do with it, it will sell to the general public. So I think a lot of times whenever you do these things and for the people that are giant fans of it, you give them the things they want. You're true to the characters. You are in the spirit of the IP, that those then people that are fans of that property are going to be your biggest cheerleaders, and they're the ones going to help, basically tell, I guess you could call them normies in that sense, about how great this ride is. So or land or whatever, the movie, the game, whatever it is. I feel like that's the way to go with this. And I think this is one of the mistakes we've seen in movies a lot of times is, you're going to make a movie or a show about a character from a video game, but they don't either know or they ignore some of the lore and the backstory to it. And then the people that are already fans of it aren't going to like that. So they're not going to be the ones that are also going to tell normies, hey, you should check this out. It's really good. So I feel like they're going about this the right way in terms of the people seem passionate about the monsters. They're going into detail, talking about the windmill with the wood parts and just how much detail they go into. I feel like little things like this are things that will help this land and probably, Epic Universe in general be successful. So I actually enjoy a lot of these, just hearing the people that were behind parts of this and just the detail it goes into and their thought process. Because first off, I've never been around doing this when a new theme park is built, and especially at this scale. So I like hearing the creativity, and something that I do like that Universal is doing here is, not only the New York Comic Con panel, but these podcasts where you can actually hear from the creatives and like some of the stuff behind it. I think is a really cool glimpse into the thought process and really the passion that they have for it. And again, I feel like everybody involved in this that I've seen on this is very passionate about what they're doing. And I feel like it's, ultimately, obviously it's not open yet, but ultimately this would lead to a great theme park experience when you have people that are passionate about whatever land, ride, or whatever the case may be that they're working on. And I feel like these do convey that. So again, Dark Universe is not one that I was excited for personally when it first came out, but the more things I've seen about it in this episode and other things, this is one of the lands that I'm really actually pretty excited for. I mean, I'm still the most excited for Super Nintendo World because that's my childhood. But I think when it comes to like the second or third place, it's somewhere in there. Like, I really do want to experience this and just see what it's like, because I like the vibe, I like the aesthetic they're going for. So I think it has a lot of potential. And again, what they end up doing with it, I feel like they're definitely doing this to sell it a bit more to a new audience and people that aren't necessarily super aware of these monsters. Like, most people have heard of Frankenstein and Dracula, but they may not have seen these movies and stuff like that, know the backstory to them. So I feel like, it's almost like a sales pitch to a new generation, a new audience, that these are characters that have a lot of depth. And I like the idea, again, of I call it the horror genre, but it's different from, say, like Halloween Horror Nights, which I actually, again, I'm not a big fan of that type of Halloween Horror Nights genre in general, but I think like the monster stuff sounds much more appealing to me. So I may actually go back and watch some of these movies in preparation going here and things like that. But I am excited to see what they present forward. But, I like these episodes. I feel like it gives them more of a glimpse of some of the aspects behind the park. And, at this point, I like hearing as much as we can about this. So I imagine we're going to see more of these, as they've had quite a few on different aspects of it. They haven't done one yet on Super Nintendo World. I don't believe they've done one on Harry Potter yet. They have done one, I think, on everything else at this point. Maybe not How to Train Your Dragon. I know they've done it on some of the hotels, on Celestial Park. I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong in the comments, let me know. But I do like seeing this, even though it's a bit of a cringe format, so I do apologize for that. But I do think there is some good information in here. And I probably enjoyed this one the most, the ones we've done before on here, because I feel like their passion for this kind of really shone through, and we're able to really, they understand this, they know it, and they can probably talk about it for hours on length. So that's something that I definitely like to hear about, something, coming to a park that I'm obviously excited for. So hopefully you guys found that interesting and entertaining and came away with some new tidbits there. So they did also release a little bit of footage of the animatronics itself. I'll just do a separate video on that to look at that. It's not a long video, but I feel like it does give you a glimpse at some of these animatronics that are going to be part of Monsters Unchained, which seem very, very high-tech and pretty lifelike in that. So probably the next video or a couple of videos after this one we'll check out. But that's going to do it, though, for this video. So if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments if you're a Universal Monsters fan. Do you like their approach to this land? And are you excited to check it out? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.